Thank you for joining us. In our continuing series on current issues and viewpoints, we attended the David Horowitz Freedom Center Restoration Weekend held at the Breakers Resort in Palm Beach, Florida. The DHFC is dedicated to the defense of free societies whose moral, cultural, and economic foundations are frequently under attack by both secular and religious opponents in our world today. Our guest is the noted author and founder of the Freedom Center, Mr. David Horowitz, who will tell us about the event and his thoughts on restoration following these messages.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation on the Mediterranean. But here, it's also a journey into history. From modern Tel Aviv to the ancient cities of Herod, the Romans, the Crusaders. The history of Israel lives in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Life Extension Foundation was established in 1977 and has grown to become the world's largest consumer-based anti-aging organization. Life-saving achievements taken for granted today were pioneered by Life Extension Foundation decades ago. Life Extension is currently funding $10 million a year in research on significantly extending a healthy human lifespan. Diseases that once plagued humanity have largely been eradicated by scientific innovation. 3 leading causes of death in 1900 compared with how people die today. Smallpox killed millions before it was eliminated in 1979. Life Extension funds research to fight biological aging so that it also will become a relic of the past. Log on to lifeextensionfoundation.org.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful, a miracle. Oh, it was beautiful, magical.
And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable. Oh, intellectual, cynical.
Find magic again. Sprout by HP. With Intel RealSense technology inside, now you can bend the rules of creativity outside.
With us now is Mr. David Horowitz. A pleasure and honor to be with you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
What interesting times we're witnessing, and here we are at this event. Tell our audience a little bit about it, please.
Well, I've been doing this since 1994. It's an annual meeting. It was modeled on the Clintons had a Renaissance weekend. So we call this the Restoration Weekend. And we just had a major restoration in the election of Donald Trump to the presidency. So America is back, and that's good for Israel.
God willing, we will see some positive changes in policy and what occurs in the Middle East, hopefully.
Wow, we've had an anti-American president for 8 years who's run down our military, attacked our important ally in the Middle East, Israel, strengthened our enemies. The Obama administration's support for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt is probably the most dangerous event for Israel in this period. Obama backed the Muslim Brotherhood and tried to undermine al-Sisi. And if the Muslim Brotherhood, that's Hamas, had been in power, Israel would have had a major war. So Israelis and Americans dodged a real bullet in the defeat of Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, Of course, Jews play such a significant role in the Democratic Party in its, particularly its funding, but at all levels, particularly its upper levels, that Obama had to be somewhat careful. So they kept up their military support, but they did tremendous damage to Israel politically and diplomatically. And I'm saddened by the support my fellow Jews have given to the Democrats. They don't deserve it. And it's very bad for the Jews if the Democrats win.
Israel is regarded as the one shining star of democracy in the Middle East.
It's the only. All the it's, you know, on I'm leading a campaign on our campuses against the Hamas fronts, Students for Justice in Palestine, the Muslim Students Association, and actually the left on American campuses. Supports BDS, the boycott movement, carries on Hamas propaganda. And part of the propaganda is that Israel's an apartheid state. Of course, not only is Israel not an apartheid state, it's the only state in the Middle East that's not an apartheid state. If you're a Christian, you can't set foot in Medina or Mecca. You can't carry a Bible, a Christian or a Jewish Bible for that matter, into Saudi Arabia. You can't build a church there. I mean, these are terrible regimes in the Middle East, and Israel is the only decent one.
Churches that precede Islam by more than 700 years are desecrated and destroyed along with Hindu temples throughout the world and so forth. My question actually is Israel as important an ally to the United States historically as ever?
You know, George Gilder wrote a book called The Israel Test. And George is not Jewish. And he pointed out that Israel is a democracy, it's an entrepreneurial society. And what he said is, if the United States can't defend Israel, it cannot defend itself. So I see Israel as the frontline state in the battle against radical Islam. We have to support Israel, or America. Look, just take the. It's really a Hitlerian. It's a genocidal lie that Israel occupies Arab land. Israel was created on land that belonged to the Turks, who obviously are not Arabs, for 400 years previously. It's the same way that Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Jordan were created. American Indians, or Native Americans, as the left likes to call them, have a greater claim on the United States of America than Arabs do on any of the land around the Jordan, including the West Bank and Gaza. That's the reality.
Interesting point. Yet things fluctuate in the Middle East constantly, incredibly so. The Arab Spring became an Arab winter, and things are more chaotic than ever.
Well, that's because Obama supported the Brotherhood instead of supporting the democracy forces. When there was a Green Revolution in 2009, the Iranians, people poured into the streets to overthrow the regime, and Obama said nothing. Nothing. And that's because he was already shaping his foreign policy around this treasonous deal with Iran. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. If Franklin Roosevelt had given nuclear weapons to Adolf Hitler, what would we have called him? Called him a traitor. Obama comes, you know, I'm confident when I say this because I come from the same background that Obama did, raised by communists, part of the left. The difference between us is that I came to a point where I saw that the left's agendas are evil and left it, and Obama never did. So we've had an anti-American president sympathetic to our enemies in the Middle East. And as a result of Obama's policies, his abandonment of Iraq, we had a major base in Iraq. We had 20,000 troops there. All his military advisors said, leave the troops there. They would have snuffed ISIS in its birth if they had remained. He took them out. He created a vacuum. As I say, supported the Brotherhood. And the result was that the vacuum was filled by Iran and the Soviet, not the Soviet Union, and Russia. Might as well be the Soviet Union. They're so adversarial. So Obama was a disaster. And the only reason that that's just not the common view of Obama is because he's black, and so he's protected. Same way Hillary was protected because she was a woman until Trump came along and just blew that politically correct bubble away. It's important. I mean, political correctness would be deferential to a woman candidate like Hillary, and there's no Republican but Trump who would have called her a crook and a liar, which she is, and that she should be in jail, which is true. She betrayed. When you think of the email scandal, which never really properly got framed, what she did was to protect the corruption, the fact that she was selling off influence in the government when she was Secretary of State to foreign powers like Qatar, which is a supporter of the terrorists, to cover up the corruption of the Clinton Foundation. She betrayed the country by taking this private server, violating her oaths of office, violating multiple violations of the Espionage Act, and exposing our secrets to our enemies. It's a terrible thing what she did. But political correctness would have protected her until Trump came along and called her a crook and a liar, which she is.
Sir, a nice thing about this transition that we are experiencing right now is Benjamin Netanyahu immediately had a phone call with
From
President
Trump, of course. Israel is our major, it is our only serious ally in the Middle East, one that's ideologically with us. As a democracy, it's a tolerant society among intolerant societies. Egypt is still an intolerant society, although Egypt is very helpful because it's opposed to the Brotherhood is a threat to the leaders of Egypt, so that's good. But Israel is the only ally that we have that we can depend on for that reason. So I think it's wonderful that Trump called Israel right out of the gate. Of course, Trump's family, he's got Orthodox, his daughter's Orthodox, his son-in-law is Orthodox Jew. This is very good for the Jews, what's happened. And it's too bad that so many Jews are stupid and don't see it. It's beyond me. I mean, when I have my campaign on the college campuses, I can't get the support of the Jewish groups. They don't want to offend the Muslims. But the Muslims are part of Hamas and the Brotherhood on campus, all of them. Every major Muslim organization in America is a Muslim Brotherhood front. And that is the organization created by Hassan al-Banna, who sent Jews into the sea, which is the agenda of Fatah and of Hamas.
So much excessive tolerance and pandering to certain interest groups.
Evil. Hamas is evil. Fatah, the Palestinian people, I mean, they've been brainwashed for so many years. 100% of them vote for terrorists who want to push the Jews into the sea, which was the slogan of the Palestinian liberation movement, so-called, until the KGB taught them, no, you should be for self-determination. That's the way you win friends. People are such suckers. I mean, it's just, they're so credulous over the years, just never learn.
I fully agree. Europe is subjected to certain situations, and politically correct leaders initially were disapproving of President-elect Donald Trump.
That's the left. Well, first of all, Europeans have been, shall we say, critical of Americans since 1776 for good reason. They don't like the New World, so they're prone to be excessively critical of the United States. But Europe has gone left for so many years. The European Union is a socialist bureaucracy. Now we're seeing the revolt against this for Brexit. We have Nigel Farage here, by the way. Very happy about that. He's the Donald Trump of the European Union, of Europe. So, and we've had here at Wilders. These are very brave European leaders. And I think the tide is turning against the left. The left has a very seductive message. You know, we're all going to, there won't be poverty, there won't be racism, there won't be sexism. We're going to have this wonderful world. But unfortunately, this is pie in the sky. It's delusional. People are people. You know, you go, I would say I'm really a secular Jew. But there's no kind of wiser book than the first books of Genesis about why the world is the way it is. You know, Cain slew Abel, brothers. That's the way of the world, and you have to take that into account. You can't open your borders and not expect people to come and try to get the fruits of centuries of hard labor and you know, a culture which encourages values that produce prosperity. So you have people come from cultures which are very backward, which is very politically incorrect to say. And they just want to take advantage of all the benefits of good cultures. So people need to pay more attention to the wisdom in Genesis. That's my view.
How do you see the future?
Well, you know, the wars are just beginning. The wars are never over. I think that we've dodged a major bullet in the election of Trump. I think the future is somewhat brighter. We're still going to have these battles. The left is I call it a crypto religion. As someone who came from the left, I understand this well. It has this delusional vision of a progressive future. But things are obviously, I mean, if you think of all the centuries of mankind, the 20th century was the worst. If you talk about, you know, the number of people slaughtered, the number of people consigned to misery, unnecessarily, artificial famines in Russia and so forth. But the left has this delusion that the history is marching forward. There's actually a carpet in the Oval Office that Obama put there with the inscription, "The moral arc of the universe is bent towards justice." No, it isn't. We're on the brink of a dark ages if Islam wins this global battle. Things are much worse than when I was a young man. What gives us this illusion is this wonderful world of technology, science and technology. There you have progress, but morally, if there was moral progress, when you read the Bible, it would seem irrelevant. It was written, after all, what is it, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. But we recognize the people in the Bible because nothing's changed morally and character-wise for human beings. And that's why the warnings and the injunctions, that's why we have to have moral teachings, because people aren't moral. They're not born moral. They're not born law. We have laws to keep the demons inside everybody in check. That's why they're there. So conservatism is realism, and so-called liberalism, progressivism, leftism, that's fantasy, and it's very destructive fantasy. I mean, look what they did to the Soviet Union before the Berlin Wall fell, the whole Soviet bloc, just terrible.
This is most interesting, but we must pause for these commercial messages. We'll be right back. We are back with David Horowitz. Sir, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the background with regard to the Restoration Weekend and these activities that are so well received and so essential.
Well, I see it as a kind of rallying point for conservatives, although I've never wanted it to get so big. I mean, we maybe have 350 people here. So there's a certain intimacy about it, which I like. And as I say, I'm a convert, if you will, from the left. So I was born to fight. And the problem with conservatives is they're so busy building things, and they're so usually pretty well bred. So they're polite, and they don't like to get into fights. Whereas the left is geared up for the battle all the time. The left is take no prisoners. They're at war, and conservatives are not. And well, and it's, you know, Trump was pretty much in the Democratic camp, so he's more like me, although I never was a Democrat. I was a Marxist. I need to see among conservatives more of a fight mentality. Go for the jugular. Fight fire with fire. And that's what at these weekends, I try to encourage people to do. And it also supports, I have this weekend is put on by the Freedom Center, the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And people call me a think tank, but I'm really a battle tank. And fairly unique in the universe of conservative organizations that way.
It's interesting to see the strange phenomena in society here in America as to all of the pandering that has occurred and all of the tolerance and political correctness which actually has engendered situations and actually in some instances made things a lot worse.
Well, political correctness is a term that was coined by Mao Zedong, the Chinese mass murderer, communist leader. And what he meant by political correctness was towing the party line. If your views were in sync with the party line, you were politically correct. And if you're politically incorrect, you get cast to the, into the cold. You get expelled from the party, and you lose all your friends. And this is what political correctness means today. It's a way of silencing opposition to the Communist Party line, which happens these days to be the Democratic Party line. The Democratic Party is a left-wing party. It is no longer the Democratic Party of Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy. If you think of Kennedy, who was a liberal icon in his day, he was a militant anti-communist, which means today he would have been a militant anti-radical Islamic terrorism. 3 words that no Democrat wants to say. He was a hawk on defense. He had the largest military buildup in peacetime history. He was for a capital gains tax cut and a balanced budget. If John F. Kennedy were alive today, people would be calling him an arch right-wing conservative Republican. That's how far left the Democratic Party is. The fact that Bernie Sanders could run in a lifelong supporter of communist causes, Bernie Sanders, honeymooned in Moscow when Moscow was under the thumb of was the capital of communism, tells you everything you need to know about today's Democratic Party. So political correctness keeps you with the Democratic Party, Communist Party line. And it would prevent people from saying, and most Republicans would defer to it, from saying to Hillary, you're a crook and a liar, and you need to be locked up, which is the truth. It's a way of silencing the truth. As I say, the left is delusional, and so they can't handle the truth. They don't tell the truth about themselves. They don't tell you what their real agendas are. And they don't want you telling the truth about them.
So you have a lifetime of achievements. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I still have some. I actually have a book that's coming out on Inauguration Day about the battle ahead. You know, my life work has really been to analyze the left, to tell conservatives what the left is about, because they have a completely different mentality from leftists. They're builders. The left is really destroyers, since they don't have a clue as to what kind of future they're going to build. So all their work is to dismantle the world, the societies in which they live. And I've got a series of books called the Black Book of the American Left. It'll be 9 volumes and more than 1 million words when it's done. Actually, I just published volume 7, called The Left in Power from Clinton to Obama. And I have a little sideline, which is kind of autobiographical and philosophical, but it also ultimately is about the philosophical undergirdings of the leftist mentality. It's a very old mentality. It goes back to goes back to Genesis, the first 18 chapters. I mean, what did the serpent, what did the devil say to Adam and Eve? He said, eat from this tree of the knowledge, eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and you shall be as gods. And that's what the left thinks they are. They think they can remake the world, change the world, fundamentally transform it. In the Democratic Party platform now, they're committed to a societal transformation, as though, which means they have to remold human beings and change human beings. Because society, the left always thinks if they see criminals or whatever, society made them this way. Society is just a reflection of the people who are in it. If society has problems, there are problems as individuals. So I have written a series of short books, one called The End of Time and one called A Point in Time, which is about this, which is a more philosophical view of this. It's also a Christian heresy. It's called the Pelagian heresy. The idea that you can create the kingdom of heaven on earth. It's also the story of Babel, building a tower to heaven. Human beings always have this delusion that everything that they see that's wrong in the world can be fixed. No, it can't. Some things can be fixed. And it's good to, the prudent way to fix things is to fix the world around you. But when you do it globally or on a societal scale, you get disaster. Lenin didn't come to power saying, we're going to kill 40 million people and create continental-wide poverty and have a gulag with 100 million people passing through it. That's not what Lenin said. Lenin said, we're going to bring peace, land, and bread to the people. Social justice. It's a very evil idea, social justice, because it presumes that the people who have made the world the bad place that it can be, that is corrupt, selfish, egocentric, deceitful human beings, can remake the world and make it perfect. And that is a really dumb idea, but it is seductive to millions of people.
As is the carpet in the Oval Office you mentioned.
The carpet, yeah, the moral arc of the universe is bent towards justice. No, it isn't. And the delusion that it is what has created the atrocities of the past 100 years. Over 100 million people murdered in peacetime by progressives, by people who think they can bring about social justice.
What a paradox that is.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my life work.
Sir, it's been such a pleasure and privilege to be with you here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
We need to do this again sometime at your convenience.
All right. Well, I'm here every year. Or you have to come to California.
Be delighted to. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.